The hum of the space station never stopped. Lights flickered gently along the long metallic corridors, and the faint scent of recycled air and oil hung in every corner. Eli, a human janitor, moved along the lower decks with his mop and bucket, whistling a quiet tune to himself. His life had always been simple: wake up, clean, eat, and sleep, but he found small joys in it. A clean floor, a shiny railing, or a kind word to a passing worker were enough to make his day. The station was huge, stretching several kilometers in every direction, and most people barely noticed those who worked in its shadows. Humans like Eli were common here: janitors, repair technicians, and supply handlers. No one expected much from them. Most saw humans as small, simple creatures with no influence on the grand empire that controlled this part of space. Eli moved past the busy hangar bay, where ships of all shapes and sizes docked and undocked, and turned into a quieter maintenance corridor. He liked this area more. It was peaceful, and the metallic walls reflected the soft white light in a calming way. As he pushed his mop forward, he noticed a faint scratching sound coming from a maintenance shaft on the far wall. Curious. Eli paused. The sound was soft, almost like a whisper, but it was persistent. He leaned closer, listening carefully. "Hello?" he called softly, not wanting to startle anyone. The sound stopped for a moment, and then a tiny, almost musical voice replied, "Hello?" Eli's heart skipped a beat. He had never heard a sound like that in all his years on the station. Most workers knew each other's voices, the hum of the machines, and the whir of the ships, but this was different. The voice was small, frightened, and almost trembling. He approached the shaft carefully and peered inside. At first, he saw nothing, only darkness and a faint shimmer of light reflecting off the metal walls. Then, a small figure appeared, crouched at the far end. It was tiny, about the size of a human child, but it was unlike any human or alien he had ever seen. Its skin glimmered faintly, changing color slightly as it moved. Large, expressive eyes stared at him, wide with fear. Long, thin fingers clutched the edge of the shaft, and the figure shivered slightly. Eli crouched down, keeping his hands visible. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you," he said gently. "Do you need help?" The figure froze, then slowly nodded. Its voice trembled as it spoke again. "Hungry and lost." Eli's heart ached. Despite all the strange and sometimes dangerous creatures he had read about in reports from the Empire, this small being seemed helpless. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small packet of protein bars he always carried for himself. "Here," he said softly, holding one out. "You can have this. It's safe." The alien hesitated, but then took it with its tiny fingers. It sniffed the bar, then nibbled carefully. Its eyes widened in surprise, and then softened as it chewed. Eli smiled, relieved. "You know," he said, "my name is Eli. What's yours?" The alien blinked, its eyes shimmering. "Leary," it said quietly. "Leary," Eli repeated, nodding. "Nice to meet you." "Don't worry, Leary. You're safe with me." Over the next few minutes, Eli spoke gently with Leary, learning small things. Leary was very young, curious, and intelligent. Even though it spoke very little, it understood much of what Eli said. The child had been abandoned here, left behind by travelers from its home planet, and had survived on scraps and tiny rations it could find in the maintenance shaft. Eli felt a strong urge to help. He had always been a quiet man, content with his work. But something about Leary's trust and fragility awakened a new sense of responsibility. He offered more food, small blankets, and even tried to teach Leary a few simple words in human language. To his surprise, Leary learned quickly, repeating words and mimicking gestures with astonishing accuracy. Days passed, and Eli continued his secret visits. Each time, he brought food, toys, made from scraps, or simple games to play. He found joy in Leary's laughter, a sound so pure and musical it seemed to echo down the corridors of the station. Workers occasionally saw him carrying supplies but assumed he was just moving equipment. No one suspected the truth. One evening, as Eli cleaned near the docking bay, he noticed a group of Empire officers walking purposefully down the corridor. Their presence always meant trouble. They were serious, commanding, and feared by almost everyone. Eli instinctively looked for Leary, who was hiding in the maintenance shaft as usual. The child peeked out, eyes wide with curiosity and fear. Eli knelt beside the shaft, whispering, "Don't worry, Leary. Just stay quiet. They won't find you." The officers paused nearby, scanning the area with devices that beeped softly. One of them muttered to another, "Security readings are unusual here. Some life form not registered on the station." Eli's stomach tightened. If they discovered Leary, the Empire would see the child as a violation of their rules, an unregistered being from an unknown species. Humans were often ignored, but they were not entirely trusted either. Still, Eli refused to panic. He knew that panicking would only make Leary scared. He stepped forward, calmly waving at the officers. "Good evening," he said politely. "Can I help you?" The officers exchanged looks. "We are here to investigate irregular life forms," one said in a cold voice. "Have you seen anything unusual?" Eli shook his head, smiling. "No, sir. Just doing my rounds, cleaning and maintenance." The officers scanned the area once more, then moved on, leaving Eli and Leary unharmed. The child looked up at him with wide eyes. Eli whispered, "See? It's okay. Everything's fine." Later that night, Eli sat with Leary in the maintenance shaft, feeding the child more carefully prepared food. He thought about the officers, about the Empire, and about how humans like him were often underestimated. Here he was, a janitor, yet he could protect and care for a being that even the Empire might fear or ignore. Leary, now full and comfortable, nestled against Eli. Its small, glimmering hands reached out to touch his face in a gesture of trust. Eli smiled softly. "You know, Leary, humans aren't strong like some of the Empire's soldiers, and we don't have fancy technology like the warships out there," he said, gesturing toward the bay. "But we have something special. Kindness, patience, and the ability to care for others. That can be more powerful than anything else." Leary tilted its head, listening carefully. It didn't fully understand all the words, but it felt the warmth in Eli's voice, the safety in his presence, and the honesty in his eyes. The days turned into weeks, and Eli's bond with Leary grew stronger. The child learned quickly, played joyfully, and even began helping Eli in small ways, like carrying light supplies or alerting him to sounds in the corridor. Together, they formed a quiet friendship that went unnoticed by most of the station's inhabitants. But Eli knew the Empire was watching. The security systems and monitoring devices were sophisticated, and it was only a matter of time before someone noticed the unusual life form and its connection to a human janitor. Eli didn't worry about himself, he worried about Leary. He didn't want the child taken away, scared, or hurt by anyone who didn't understand. One evening, as the artificial sun of the station set in its usual slow cycle, Eli and Leary sat on a quiet catwalk overlooking the docking bay. Ships landed and took off, lights blinking and engines humming. Eli handed Leary a small model ship he had made from spare parts. "See this?" he said. "One day, maybe you can travel the stars safely. But for now, let's just enjoy this moment." Leary's eyes glimmered brighter than ever. For a small moment, the weight of abandonment and fear seemed to lift from its tiny shoulders. And Eli, the human janitor who many considered unremarkable, felt a spark of something larger than himself: responsibility, courage, and hope. Unbeknownst to him, the monitoring devices had already recorded every interaction, every act of kindness, every small gesture of care. The Empire would soon receive these reports, and a decision would be made about Eli and Leary. But at that moment, all that mattered was the bond between a human janitor and a lonely alien child. A bond that, though simple, had the power to shake assumptions and change destinies in ways no one yet understood. And so, as the stars shone through the station's transparent panels, Eli and Leary sat quietly, sharing a meal, a laugh, and a connection that transcended species, hierarchy, and expectation. It was the beginning of a story that would soon reach the ears of the galaxy's most powerful leaders and show them, perhaps for the first time, that humans were capable of extraordinary things in the simplest of ways. The hum of the space station had changed. Where once the corridors were filled with the soft noises of daily activity, now there was an underlying tension, a quiet alertness that had not been there before. Eli sensed it immediately. He had spent weeks quietly caring for Leary, the small, abandoned alien child he had found in a maintenance shaft. And now, something was different. The sensors in the station were buzzing. The monitors in the control rooms had recorded something unusual, a human forming a bond with an alien child. The Empire had noticed. A sleek Imperial ship descended to dock at the station, its hull shining under the station's lights. Officers in crisp uniforms stepped off, moving with the precision and authority that marked them as members of the highest ranks. They were here to investigate, and Eli knew it. He took a deep breath, resting a hand on Leary's shoulder. The child's shimmering skin reflected the lights above, glinting softly like a star. Leary's eyes, wide and trusting, looked up at him. "Are they coming?" the child asked softly. "They are," Eli replied calmly. "But we'll be fine. Just stay with me, and nothing will happen." The officers walked through the lower corridors with their scanning devices, their presence immediately commanding attention. Workers and visitors stepped aside. Giving them a wide berth, Eli met them quietly as they approached, holding his mop bucket in one hand and the other hand relaxed at his side. "Good evening," he said politely. "Can I help you with anything?" The lead officer, tall and stern, looked him up and down, his gaze sharp and calculating. "We have reports of an irregular life form aboard this station," he said in a measured tone. "We need to know if you have seen anything unusual." Eli nodded, keeping his voice calm and steady. "No, sir. Just the usual traffic, cleaning, and maintenance. I haven't seen anything unusual." The officer's gaze lingered on him for a moment longer. Then he turned to scan the corridor with a device that emitted a soft blue glow. It beeped faintly, and the officer's eyes narrowed. "Strange," he muttered. "Sensors are picking up something unusual, but we do not see it directly." Eli swallowed. He knew this moment could be dangerous. Leary, hidden behind a panel in the maintenance shaft, clutched a small blanket close to its chest. Eli whispered, "It's okay. Just stay calm." The officers continued their sweep, moving closer to where Eli had been hiding Leary. But Eli remained composed. He had learned over weeks of cleaning and observing the station that calmness could often prevent panic in others. More importantly, he understood that fear would only make Leary more vulnerable. Once the officers moved past, Eli exhaled slowly. Leary peeked out from behind the panel, its eyes wide and filled with a mixture of awe and confusion. Eli smiled softly. "See? Nothing bad happened. They didn't find you." But Eli knew the Empire would not simply walk away. Reports of Leary's presence, coupled with the human child's growing intelligence, would reach higher authorities. The Empire was strict, and it rarely ignored anomalies, especially a human demonstrating such unusual behavior. The next day, Eli continued his routine, though he could feel the attention on him. He brought Leary to a quieter section of the station, a small storage area rarely visited. There, he had set up a little space with blankets, makeshift toys, and small meals for the child. Leary moved quickly, helping him set up a tiny corner for play. Its movements were graceful, almost elegant, despite its young age. "You know," Eli said, handing Leary a small toy made from spare parts, "you don't have to be afraid of them. The Empire. They just want to understand. And you're special. They might not know it yet, but you are." Leary's large eyes shimmered as it studied the toy. Then it looked at Eli and nodded, understanding in its own quiet way. Even though it didn't fully grasp the Empire's presence or power, it trusted Eli completely. Later, as Eli cleaned the corridors, a soft chime echoed from the nearby control room. A message had arrived directly from the Empire's high command. Investigate the human janitor's interactions with the alien life form. Report findings. Eli read the message carefully. The Empire would come personally this time. He felt no fear, only a sense of responsibility. He knew his duty was to protect Leary. Not by hiding it, but by demonstrating something the Empire might not have seen before. The human way of caring. That evening, the Imperial officers returned, but this time with a different demeanor. Instead of their usual sternness, there was a subtle curiosity in their movements. They observed Eli from a distance as he fed Leary, spoke gently to it, and taught the child simple tasks. Leary responded with laughter, mimicking Eli's gestures and words, and even solving small puzzles Eli presented. The officers exchanged glances. One whispered, How is this human able to connect with it so easily? Eli, sensing their presence, looked up calmly. Hello again, he said with a gentle smile. I hope I'm not disturbing anything. The lead officer stepped forward. We need to know. How did you gain the trust of this life form? Eli set down his tray of food and sat cross-legged on the floor. I didn't do anything special. I just listened, offered food when it was hungry, and stayed with it. I treated it the way I would hope to be treated if I were alone and scared. The officers were silent. Leary, now perched beside Eli, tilted its head curiously at the strangers. It had learned to sense moods and read emotions, a skill that surprised even Eli sometimes. The child's trust in him made it bold enough to look at the officers. But it didn't speak, unsure of what they wanted. One officer finally said, We are unfamiliar with this species. It is not registered with the Empire. And it shows intelligence far beyond initial scans. Eli nodded. Yes, it is smart. And it's like a child. It needs care, trust, and patience. It's not dangerous, it just needs someone to be kind. The officers paused, observing. They were trained to see threat and potential utility. But here, the child was neither a threat nor a tool. It was simply alive, responding to kindness, responding to humanity. After hours of observation, the lead officer finally spoke. This human. You demonstrate something unusual. You are showing patience, understanding, and empathy. These are qualities we did not expect. Eli smiled softly. Empathy is not unusual. It's human. The officer studied him for a long moment. Then, quietly, he said, Perhaps humans are more capable than we believed. For the first time, Eli felt a small shift in power. Humans had been underestimated across the galaxy, dismissed as simple laborers or weak creatures. But here, through small acts of care, he had shown the Empire a new perspective. Humans could connect, nurture, and teach. Even the most advanced technology or strategic plan could not replicate this. Days passed, and the Empire's presence remained. But instead of enforcing rules, they observed. Eli continued his simple routine with Leary, feeding it, teaching it, and allowing it to explore the station safely. Leary grew more confident, more playful, and even began solving small challenges Eli presented, such as opening storage compartments or figuring out the simplest mechanics of moving objects safely. Through this, the officers witnessed something extraordinary. They saw a human, small and unassuming, making a difference not through force, technology, or strategy, but through empathy, patience, and trust. They began to understand that humans had a unique ability to influence other species, not by command, but by connection. One night, Eli and Leary sat atop a catwalk, looking down at the docking bay. Lights of ships and stations blinked below them. You see, Leary, Eli said softly, the galaxy is big, and people often think that power is the most important thing, but sometimes kindness, understanding, and trust They matter more than anything else. Leary's eyes shimmered as it listened, absorbing every word. Its trust in Eli had grown beyond fear, beyond curiosity. It had become a bond, and that bond was something the Empire had never fully experienced. A simple human connection that challenged their assumptions. As the stars moved slowly across the station's viewing panels, Eli realized that the Empire was learning something new as well. Humans were underestimated, yes, but they were capable of extraordinary things when they chose to care, protect, and connect. And so, the human janitor and the lonely alien child continued their quiet life aboard the station. The Empire watched, curious and cautious. But Eli remained calm. Through simple acts of compassion, he was already teaching them lessons that no report or observation could fully capture. Humans could change perspectives, shape futures, and inspire respect not with weapons, but with kindness. Little did Eli know, the Empire's interest would soon reach a higher level. His actions, simple as they were, had started to ripple outward. And when the decision came, it would not just affect him and Leary, it might change the Empire's view of humanity forever. But for now, Eli and Leary sat quietly, sharing a meal, playing with a small toy ship, and enjoying the peaceful connection that only trust and care could create. The galaxy outside continued to move in its complex rhythms, unaware that a janitor and a child had already begun to rewrite what it meant to respect humans. The Empire had not left the station. Instead, it stayed, observing, analyzing, and quietly learning from what Eli had been doing all along. At first, their intent had been to investigate, perhaps to question, even to control. But after days of watching, the officers began to see something entirely unexpected. A human janitor, a simple worker, in the eyes of most, had accomplished something that no imperial protocol, no technological system, and no officer's authority could achieve. He had earned the trust of an alien child. Eli moved quietly through the station, carrying a small tray of food for Leary. The child had grown more confident in recent weeks, its shimmering skin brighter, its eyes clearer, and its laughter more frequent. To anyone else, Leary might have seemed ordinary, or perhaps strange, but to Eli, the child was extraordinary. Leary had become a friend, a companion, and a source of inspiration in ways he had never imagined. As he reached the small corner of the station where he had set up Leary's space, he noticed several Imperial officers standing nearby, observing from a distance. Eli did not panic. Instead, he smiled gently. "Good morning," he said warmly, setting the tray down. "Leary, breakfast." Leary's eyes lit up. "Morning," it said in its small, melodic voice, and quickly began nibbling on the meal. Eli watched it for a moment, marveling at the child's curiosity and intelligence. Then, without hesitation, he began to speak to the officers. "You're welcome to watch," Eli said calmly. "I don't hide anything. The child is safe, and you can see that care and patience work better than force." The officers exchanged glances. One of them, the lead officer from before, stepped forward. "We came to understand this interaction," he said carefully. "We wanted to see if there was any manipulation or danger." Eli shook his head. "There's nothing dangerous here. Just trust, patience, and understanding. The child responds to kindness. That's all." The officers observed silently as Leary began to play with a small puzzle Eli had made from spare materials. With careful guidance, Leary manipulated the pieces, learning quickly and even showing innovative approaches to solving the challenge. The officers noted every movement, impressed despite themselves. "You see," Eli said, turning slightly to face them, "this child is capable, not because of power or fear, but because it has a safe environment, care, and guidance. That's what humans can provide. That's what we do best. We connect, we nurture, and we teach." One of the officers, a younger recruit, looked at him in surprise. You're showing us something different. Something we weren't expecting, Eli nodded. Humans are often underestimated. People see us as simple, small, or weak. But our strength isn't in our size or technology. It's in our ability to care for each other and to help others grow. Leary isn't just a child, it's a life. And when we respect life, we bring out the best in it. The lead officer studied him carefully. You are remarkable, he admitted quietly. It is rare to see someone bridge such a gap between species with only empathy and patience. You have achieved what our protocols cannot. Eli smiled. It's not remarkable. It's human. Days passed, and the Empire continued to observe. But instead of restricting Eli, they allowed him more freedom. They began to understand that what humans did was not an anomaly. It was a strength. Eli's bond with Leary became an unspoken lesson for all who watched. Patience, empathy, and kindness were forms of power the Empire had long ignored. One afternoon, as Eli taught Leary how to fold simple mechanical tools, an officer approached him with a question. Why do you care so deeply for this child? It is not human, yet you treat it as your own. Eli looked up, thoughtful. Because life matters. Every creature has value, and sometimes, the smallest acts of care can have the largest impact. That's how we change the world. Little by little. The officer paused, clearly considering Eli's words. Then he nodded slowly. Perhaps we have underestimated humans, he said softly. Eli smiled again. He knew that respect was not earned through fear or dominance, but through consistent action. By simply being human, compassionate, patient, and thoughtful, he was teaching the Empire lessons they had never learned. Leary, now more confident than ever, began exploring the station with Eli. It learned quickly, asking questions in its melodic voice, testing its small problem-solving skills, and even offering ideas for small improvements around their space. The officers watched silently, astonished at the collaboration. Here was a human and an alien child, working together not through command, but through trust and mutual understanding. In one small corner of the station, Eli pointed to a broken panel. Can you help me fix this, Leary? He asked. The child's eyes gleamed. Try, like this, it suggested, moving the tools with delicate precision. Within moments, the panel was restored, perfectly aligned. Eli clapped his hands softly. Excellent. See? Working together makes us stronger. The officers were silent. They had never witnessed such cooperation, such mutual respect, and such clear evidence of the human capacity to inspire and nurture. They began to see a truth they had never considered. Humans were capable of influencing others not through fear or orders, but through care, example, and connection. Over the following weeks, Eli and Leary's bond became an unspoken model for the Empire. Other officers began to observe similar interactions between humans and alien species on nearby stations. Slowly, a new understanding emerged. Humans were not just laborers or minor citizens of the galaxy, they were connectors, educators, and nurturers. Their empathy created harmony where others had seen only potential for conflict. One evening, Eli and Leary sat together in the observation lounge, looking out at the stars through the station's wide panels. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, full of unknown worlds and countless possibilities. Eli reached out and held Leary's small hand. You know, Leary, he said softly, humans are often overlooked. But when we act with care, kindness, and patience, we can do things no one else can. The galaxy, the Empire, they may not understand it yet, but one day, they will. Leary looked up, its eyes shining. We, together? It asked. Eli nodded. Yes, together, always. The Empire officers, observing from a distance, nodded as well. They began to realize that humans' true strength was not in weapons or strategy, but in their ability to connect, nurture, and teach. They had seen it firsthand in Eli's quiet, consistent actions, and they knew that humanity's influence was something to respect, even to rely on. As weeks turned into months, The station became a symbol of this new understanding. Humans were no longer just simple workers, they were ambassadors of empathy, capable of bridging gaps between species and reshaping galactic perspectives. Eli returned to his janitorial duties, cleaning floors and polishing railings. Yet he did so with quiet pride. He had done more than care for a single alien child, he had shown the galaxy what it meant to be human. Leary continued to grow, learning from Eli and exploring the station with confidence. It had become a shining example of what could happen when life was treated with respect and kindness. The child's intelligence and creativity flourished, guided by simple human compassion. The Empire eventually left the station, but the lessons they had observed remained. Reports were sent across the galaxy, quietly shifting the way humans were seen. Other species began to respect humans not for strength, not for technology, but for their ability to nurture, inspire, and lead through care. Eli and Leary, unaware of the full extent of their impact, continued their days together. They played, learned, and explored, building a bond that transcended species, hierarchy, and expectation. Their story became a quiet legend among those who witnessed it. A human janitor and a lonely alien child had reminded the galaxy of the power of kindness, patience, and empathy. And so, in the vast reaches of space, where warships and empires often ruled by force, a small human and a small alien child quietly changed the way the galaxy thought. One simple act of care had blossomed into a lesson that would ripple outward, showing that humanity's true strength lay not in might, but in heart. Eli looked at Leary, smiling as the child's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "The galaxy is big, Leary," he said, "but together, we can make it a little better. One kind act at a time." Leary reached up, touching Eli's hand. "Together," it repeated. The stars shone bright beyond the station's panels, indifferent to politics, empires, and machinery. But they witnessed, in their quiet way, a small miracle. Humans, through empathy and care, had begun to shape the future. And in that simple truth, Eli found pride, hope, and the unshakable certainty that humanity's influence was only beginning.